He almost didn't notice them at first. The rain had just started to fall in a thin silver mist, blurring the cafe lights into soft halos. Arman Qureshi stood outside the little corner restaurant, staring at his phone as the message flashed across the screen for the third time. She wasn't coming. Something about not feeling the vibe anymore. A blind date arranged by friends, canceled 30 minutes before they were supposed to meet. He felt foolish standing there in his pressed navy shirt, hair carefully styled, heart cautiously hopeful for the first time in years. For a moment, he considered going home. He imagined reheating leftovers, scrolling endlessly through social media, pretending he didn't care. But then he glanced toward the outdoor tables and saw them. A woman with tired eyes and a small boy sitting across from her. The boy was staring at a plate that held nothing but crumbs. The woman's hands were folded under her chin as if she were trying to hold herself together, and something inside Arman shifted. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness and second chances, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and whether you think small acts of kindness can change a life. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Arman had built his life on order. After his father's death 5 years earlier, he had thrown himself into his architecture firm, working late nights, designing sleek glass buildings that rose like monuments to control and precision. Relationships felt messy, unpredictable. After a painful breakup 2 years ago, he had sworn off emotional risks. Tonight had been a rare exception. Now, rejected before the night even began, he felt a familiar heaviness creeping in. The waiter approached the woman and her son with a polite but strained expression. Arman couldn't hear their words, but he saw the woman nod apologetically, reaching into her worn handbag. She counted coins. Not enough. The waiter hesitated, then gestured gently toward the empty plate. The boy lowered his eyes. Arman didn't think. He simply walked inside. The warmth of the cafe wrapped around him, carrying the scent of fresh bread and roasted coffee. He told the waiter he would cover their bill and asked him to bring a proper meal, something warm and filling for both of them. The waiter looked surprised, but relieved. When Arman carried the tray out himself, 2 plates of pasta, fresh juice, and a small dessert for the boy. The woman looked up, startled. Up close, she looked younger than he had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, but exhaustion clung to her like a shadow. Her dark hair was tied back loosely, and faint circles framed her eyes. He introduced himself simply and explained that his table was empty and he hated eating alone. It was a half-truth. She hesitated, pride flickering across her face, but the boy's hopeful gaze broke her resistance. She thanked him quietly. Her name was Samara. The boy was Ilyan. As they ate, Arman learned that Samara had recently moved to the city after leaving a difficult marriage. She worked double shifts at a tailoring shop nearby, trying to save enough for rent and school fees. Tonight, her paycheck had been delayed. She had promised Ilyan a small dinner out to celebrate his good grades, not expecting the embarrassment that followed. Arman listened more than he spoke. He noticed how Samira tried to keep her back straight despite her fatigue, how she smiled whenever Ilyan laughed, even if her own eyes remained heavy. He noticed the way Ilyan carefully folded his napkin, as if he didn't want to cause trouble. Something about them unsettled him. Not in discomfort, but in recognition. He saw in Samira the same quiet resilience his mother had carried after his father's death. He saw in Ilyan the same silent hope he himself had once held as a child, watching his parents struggle. The rain began to fall harder, tapping against the awning like a steady drumbeat. Other diners hurried inside. The world outside blurred into gray streaks. For the first time that evening, Arman forgot about the canceled date. Instead of awkward small talk, the conversation flowed naturally. Samara spoke of her dreams of opening a small boutique someday. Ilyan excitedly described how he wanted to become an engineer and build bridges that connected cities. Arman smiled at that. imagining a future where the boy might actually design something greater than any building he had created. But beneath the warmth of the meal lingered tension. Armand knew this was a fleeting moment. He was a stranger who had paid for dinner. They would thank him, leave, and return to their separate worlds. Yet as Samara reached for her bag to leave, the strap snapped. The worn leather gave way completely, spilling its contents onto the damp pavement. Coins, a folded resume, a school notebook, and a final notice from a landlord. The paper caught Armand's eye. 3 days overdue. Samira scrambled to gather everything, her cheeks flushed with humiliation. The rain soaked the edges of the notice. Ilyan tried to shield it with his small hands. Armand felt something tighten in his chest. He remembered the night his mother had cried quietly at the kitchen table over a similar notice. He had pretended to sleep, but he had heard every muffled sob. Without making a show of it, he offered them a ride home. Samira resisted at first, but the rain was now relentless, and Ilyan was shivering. His car was warm, softly lit, a stark contrast to the narrow, dim street where they lived. The building was older, paint peeling, lights flickering in the hallway. Armand carried the broken bag upstairs without comment. Inside, the apartment was small but tidy. A single lamp illuminated the room. Ilyan proudly showed Armand his school certificates pinned carefully to the wall. That night, something inside Armand cracked open. He went home unable to sleep. The canceled date felt insignificant now. Instead, he kept thinking about the landlord's notice, the exhaustion in Samara's posture, the quiet determination in Ilyan's eyes. The next morning, he did something impulsive. He called his property manager and asked if any of his smaller apartments were vacant. One was, recently renovated, modest, but comfortable. He hesitated. Was this charity, pity, or something deeper? He decided to visit the tailoring shop where Samara worked. He didn't bring money, he brought an offer, temporary accommodation in exchange for designing uniforms for a new project his firm was undertaking. It wasn't a lie. The firm did need tailoring services. He simply chose her. Samara listened, stunned. Pride battled gratitude once more. But this time, hope won. Over the following weeks, Armand found reasons to stop by. Sometimes he brought architectural sketches for Ilyan to look at. Sometimes he simply checked if the apartment repairs were satisfactory. Slowly, carefully, their lives began to intertwine. Armand discovered that kindness was not a grand, dramatic act, but a series of quiet decisions. Fixing a leaking faucet, helping with math homework, dropping off groceries without making it obvious. And in return, he received something he hadn't known he was missing: laughter in a home that wasn't silent, the smell of home-cooked food, the feeling of belonging somewhere beyond glass offices and blueprints. But change is never without conflict. One evening, Samara confronted him. She asked why he was doing all this. People didn't help without expecting something in return. Her past had taught her that generosity often came with hidden costs. Armand realized then that trust would be their greatest challenge. He told her the truth, not about heroism, but about loneliness, about the canceled date, about how he had been standing in the rain feeling rejected when he saw her and Ilyan. He admitted that helping them had helped him more than he could explain. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was fragile, heavy with unspoken fears. Then Ilyan ran into the room holding a drawing. It showed 3 figures under a bright sun: himself, his mother, and a tall man with messy hair labeled Armand Uncle. Above them, he had written in uneven letters, "My bridge." The word hit Armand harder than any confession. He realized he hadn't just paid for a meal, he had become a connection, a bridge between despair and possibility. Months passed. The landlord's notice became a distant memory. Samara's tailoring orders increased. Armand helped her set up a small online page to showcase her designs. Ilyan's grades improved, and he proudly announced he had been selected for a city science competition. On the evening of the competition, as Armand watched Ilyan present his miniature bridge model, he felt a swell of pride unlike anything his career had given him. The boy's voice trembled at first, then grew steady. In the audience, Samara's eyes glistened. Arman understood then that love does not always begin with fireworks. Sometimes it begins with canceled plans and empty plates. Sometimes it begins with disappointment that makes room for something unexpected. Near the end of that year, on a quiet evening at the same cafe where it had all started, Arman sat across from Samara and Elian again. This time, there were no empty plates, no shame, only warmth. If this story is touching your heart, take a moment right now to like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope can arrive in the most unexpected ways, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that restore faith in humanity. Your engagement truly helps these messages reach farther than you know. And before we reach the end, here's a special request. Comment the word bridge below if you believe we all have the power to connect someone from pain to possibility. As the sun set, casting golden light over the cafe tables, Arman realized that his blind date hadn't canceled his night. It had redirected his life. What felt like rejection had been protection. What felt like embarrassment had become purpose. He had walked into that evening hoping to impress a stranger. He walked out having found a family. And sometimes the most beautiful love stories don't begin with perfect plans. They begin with kindness, offered in the rain, and a small, hungry child who reminds us what truly matters.